Right, guys, we'll make a start. If anyone joins us, I'll admit them as we go. So, good evening and good afternoon. Welcome to Carlisle RTC's webinar, which is all about using the use of iPad in the dreaded Ofsted inspection. And what I'm hoping to do today is share a little bit of our story about our recent inspection. Just to let you all know, from the start, I am recording the webinar. I think most of you got your cameras turned off. I am recording it, and this will be made available on our RTC Twitter and YouTube channels. So my name is Matt Squires, and I'm going to be hosting this webinar this evening. Alongside me, and he'll introduce himself in a little while, is Graham Corkin, and we've also got on the call with us Michelle Kingston, who is a teacher at Inglewood Junior School. So the first part, I'm going to try and share my screen, so hopefully this will work nice and smooth as it did in practice with Graham yesterday. Oh. There we go. And hopefully now you can see using iPad in an Ofsted inspection and looking at how school leaders can demonstrate the positive impact that iPad has on children's learning. So yeah, my name is Matthew Squires. I'm the RTC manager at Inglewood Junior School. I'm a full-time Year 4 teacher, as well as being maths lead in the school. So I had an active role across the inspection, and I've worked at Inglewood Junior School now for 11 years. Alongside me on the call is Graham Corkin. If you want to come off mute, Graham, and introduce yourself.
Can do. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah, my name is Graham Corkin. Work for Sync. We're an Apple authorised education specialist. We've been lucky enough to work alongside Matt and Inglewood Junior School for the past 6 years. And Carlisle RTC, I should say, is one of our RTCs. That's a little bit about us.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, just a little bit. Apple Regional Training Centres, if you're not aware, we deliver courses to build on the skills and confidence of educators to use Apple technology inside and outside the classroom. We're a community who share best practices and inspire excellence through teaching with Apple technology. As I say, we are Carlisle Apple Regional Training Centre. There are our Twitter handles if you want them, or our website and our YouTube channel, and I'll make these available for you all at the end of the webinar as well. And via those mediums, you can get in touch with me if there's anything that comes up in the webinar that you'd like to have a chat about. So the key points that I'd like to discuss in this session, talk to you a little bit about our context, our school history. And then there's going to be a section of using the iPad as part of the inspection process, how we actually used it to guide the inspection. Then I would like to discuss how we showed the positive impact of iPads on our children's learning. A little bit after that about teacher workload and online safety. And then finally, the challenges that we faced during the inspection and how we overcame these. So, for a little bit of context, we were last inspected in May 2016, where we were awarded a good overall grade. One of our targets from that inspection at the time with that framework was about developing children's independence in learning. And as part of that process and a SWOT analysis we did in school, we purchased iPads in September, ready to go in September 2016. At that point, we were in, I think it was the shared basis across 2 year groups. Just the context, we are a junior school, so we start at Year 3, go through to Year 6. And then we became an RTC, and we had a one-to-one program of iPads where all children have their own iPad from 2019. And then we received our full Section 5 inspection in April this year, April 2022. As you would appreciate, this was our first inspection since we introduced iPads in 2016, and which is why I wanted to share our story really of our inspection and how we discussed iPads throughout that process. So first of all, before I go into how we used iPad as part of the inspection process, at no point am I telling you now how to do your Ofsted if you work in a school. This is just me sharing our story on what worked for us. It'd be remiss of me to say this works for Ofsted or this doesn't work for Ofsted. All I can talk about is the conversations that we had as part of the process and what worked for us. The Ofsted report is available on our school website if you want to take a read. However, as anybody who's been through the inspection, the report is actually quite minimal. Details in there, they're kept to like a strict format. So a lot of what I'll talk about is not only what's in the report, but also the feedback we had as an SLT from the inspectors to governors, which was a lot more detailed and covered a lot more areas than the actual report that we got at the end. So when we looked at using iPad as part of the inspection process, this was how we used iPad. Our leaders used iPad to drive the inspection. So first of all subject leaders had created an ebook using pages for their subjects. What this did, that created basically a subject highlight package, which contained evidence of progress throughout the years. It included videos of lessons, extracts of lessons. It included examples of when they spoke to pupils, pupil voice, and through their own monitoring process of the subjects. And all subject leaders had this to hand at the touch of a button, really. If anybody's been through the process before, sometimes when you're involved in interviews as part of the inspection process, you've got things you want to say, but they can just drop out of your head because of the pressure and being put on the spot sometimes. And what our leaders did, what having their iPad with them through their interviews, it allowed them to make sure they referred to everything they wanted to as part of their interviews. And as I say, that was all at the touch of the button. All children and teachers took their iPad to all interviews with inspectors. This made it easy, especially for children, to refer to past pieces of work, which we use Shobi, where we upload all our work to. What that allowed to is when inspectors ask children about giving an example of a piece of work they found difficult, or when they've had good feedback from a teacher, they're able to say, well, let me show you on my iPad. And we're able to go confidently into Shobi and show them a piece of work that they produced. All work in Inglewood is uploaded to Shobi. Work's completed sometimes directly on Shobi, work's completed in books, like most schools. But every piece of work, whether completed in book or online, is uploaded to Shobi as part of our gathering of evidence, really. So every lesson, effectively, that the child had gone was available to the child on their iPad with the inspection. Inspectors were offered an iPad when they arrived, with access to a full monitoring account, which accessed the all 10 classes and all their work that they completed on Shobi as well. And as our iPads were used to navigate our deep dives. Now, our deep dives were in maths, reading, PE and art. As part of the deep dive process, it started with an interview with the subject leader. As maths leader, I can talk about this firsthand. And that part of the process was I was showing the inspector examples of our curriculum and planning, which I got once again at the touch of a button. Obviously, then we went around and looked at some lessons where the inspector obviously saw children working and using iPads as part of their work. And then they spoke to children afterwards, where once again children had their iPads with them, and that triangulation effect happened where I'd showed the inspector work we were completing on the iPad, then they saw it in action in the classroom, and then talked to children and the staff afterwards. And because it's been embedded now for a number of years, realistically, everybody was singing from the same hymn sheet, obviously. So that's how we really use the iPad to drive the inspection. Obviously, we knew as a school, being an Apple school, we were fortunate enough to have many different apps and programs that we use, and we really want to get this across to inspectors, the full weight of what we do, really. I'm just going to come back in from the shared screen, and just to see if anyone has any questions about that part of the inspection process. If you do, just pop it in the chat box. If not, I will push on. Grand. Okay. Right. Okay. So, next part, I'm going to talk about how we demonstrated the impact of iPads, which have had a positive impact on our children's our children's learning. And in the final report, the one snippet I took to the point is that leaders had designed an ambitious curriculum. In our feedback as an SLT, the inspectors did say how this was driven by the use of technology, and that technology was the spine that ran through the whole curriculum. However, in the report, it did just say leaders have designed an ambitious curriculum. So we first talked about impact at that time in April. We were still talking a little bit about remote learning, and we were able to discuss how each child having an individual iPad supported our remote learning package, and how each child took home the iPad, and by using Shobi and other programs, they were allowed to have daily lessons with their teacher, which reduced the impact of that mislearning, which they were pleased to see. Having returned, if I give you a bit of context, having returned from lockdown, we did meet as an SLT and a leadership team, and we talked about after the remote learning, where I guess iPads have become an essential piece of kit for our learning. We wanted to bring back, having returned back to school, a bit more back to our roots of why we had purchased iPads in the first place. They've been fantastic over remote learning, but we felt that teachers may have felt a little bit into them becoming a little bit like paper replacements, which effectively came as part of remote learning. So this was not why we bought iPads. We introduced iPads to enhance our teaching and learning. We wanted to get back to basics, really. So we used the Apple Teacher Portfolio, and we trained all our teaching staff and worked with our staff with that, which gave them digging back to basics to look at core Apple apps and how those core Apple apps could be used to improve and enhance teaching and learning experiences, which had happened circa 12 months before the inspection. So when the inspectors came in, what they were able to see around the school when they dropped into whether it be maths or science or music is technology having a positive impact on children's learning, with meaningful tasks and opportunities to support the core teaching. Children were witnessed, it was commented by the inspector team, how they were given a range of opportunities to respond to directed tasks independently using the core Apple apps. So, for example, a teacher would drive a subject, and the child would decide how they were going to respond to the teacher via, it could be via a video or a podcast. And that had been really not only embedded since 2016, but revisited into 2021, because we felt from a lot of positive things came from remote learning, but a lot of teachers became then reliant on certain programs, or I want to improve my subject by buying this program or that program. Whereas going through the Apple Teacher Portfolio, when we went back to basics, looked at our core Apple apps, and then that had been introduced back into the curriculum. And so, as I say, there was 4 deep dives taken that in art, PE, reading and maths, and then there were 3 sort of mini dives the day after in modern foreign languages, computing, and science. And what was commented on is how all the children, when they spoke to the children, how confident the children had spoke about how they were given opportunity to respond independently using software that they chose. So that was really positive. We also took the step when we came back after remote learning to still send iPads home. Our children take iPads home throughout the week to complete their homework in, and Ofsted were quite impressed by that, as they said, as it kept the continuity between what was happening in the classroom and what parents could see at home. We discussed how parents could access their child's Shobi account on their iPad and have a look at the work they'd done that day, which, you know, was really positive. There were questions that came from that about online safety, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the webinar. But within that, we're also able to show children's independence in taking ownership of their learning, which was one of our targets from our previous Ofsted. I'm just going to pause there. And do we have has anybody got any questions about that part, how we use the iPad to positive effect on children's learning? Okay, Stu, you've got a question. Do you want to type it into the chat box, buddy? Did you direct it to certain apps? Yeah, I think within the when we had our meeting, there is a lot to look at. We've solely focused on the core Apple apps, about bringing those back into our, not bringing back as a loss, but really being the core of our teaching. So the core Apple apps, what I mean by that is Pages, Numbers, etc., iMovie, Keynote, and using that. And when we, as part of the portfolio, when they were designing their resources that they were trialing in those classes, it was from those core apps. So Stu, how do you prevent children adding or training work at home that's been completed in class? We lock that down. So on Shobi, you've got a feature, obviously, where it's, children can edit it. At the end of the day, a teacher will lock an assignment or make it read only, so parents and children can read it at home, but they can't adapt or change anything, which was quite important. And I will talk a little bit how we facilitate that later in the call. And Jennifer, just going back, there is a lot to look at. It was a lot to look at. The Apple Teacher portfolio is a large commitment. All our teachers in school and senior teaching assistants are trained and qualified up to Apple Teacher level. And it was important that we wanted to take that on from there. So we started off straight away with portfolio with sort of just teaching staff, which we're now on to training up our senior teaching assistants and so on in its measure. But it is a large undertaking. I mean, we started that in April, and we have had teachers who it took up to 12 months to finish, because it does take time. So yeah, you're right. It's a decent undertaking, but I have to say worthwhile. I think, Richard, in looking at impact, I think it's fair to say if you'd have visited the school before the teachers were went down the portfolio route, I think that although they were very proficient with the technology, like I said, I feel that remote learning and how we did remote learning, which was great, just taking them away from why we got iPads in the first place, just a little tad. And I think the impact is that, like I say, children are given a variety of mediums, Apple mediums, to respond to tasks on. I think the quality of what they're producing is better. I do try. I'm sharing. If you subscribe to our Twitter, I'm sharing a Twitter channel. I'm sharing an example of what children are producing there independently. And I think that from 1 year on of the portfolio, and teachers have that confidence to try different resources, to try those core Apple apps, even the ones they're not so confident in. Your GarageBand, which has been great for children to inspire their writing to record podcasts. I think it's had a really positive effect. And I think if you look at the school, you came to see the school now, unfortunately, when Ofsted came compared to 12 months, I really think it's had a massive impact. Massive. I'm happy to share that with you. Good question. It was to a certain extent because we have it was through staff meetings, but we did have a little club where we met sometimes at lunchtimes after school. Staff did give up quite a bit of time to do it, and I'm grateful and appreciate we have got a really committed team here at Inglewood who were willing to give up a little bit of their time, because they hopefully saw the impact that it was going to have, Richard, later on. And obviously, the more confident they became designing these apps and working with children using these programs, the easier it gets. And then the workload factor kicks in. Obviously, when you first produce a resource, the first time you've used maybe Pages, it takes a little bit longer than when you've really used it a few times. So yeah, I'm happy to share that. If you want to get in touch with me via Twitter or our channel, I'm happy to share that with you, because it's something we're still doing. It's still ongoing. And I'm really do encourage anyone who's involved to take a look at it. It's really good. Right, I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you. And if there's any more questions, I will come back at the end. Okay. So I just want to take another part of the inspection was our approach and teaching of children who fall with SEND needs. And what the report said is they ensured that this group of pupils received effective support to be able to achieve well. What we were able to demonstrate is the impact that technology of the iPad, not just technology, the iPad has had on supporting children not with specific SEND needs, maybe children who've got an EHCP. We use a system with support plans for children who fall a little bit behind, and all that is online. and accessible. Once again, we showed inspectors how that was accessible not only to teacher staff, the child drives that by putting emojis on an online support plan towards the target, and is also accessed by the parents. And they thought that was really, really positive, and it gives the children the ownership and parents of their support plan. We were able to demonstrate throughout what they were able to see through lessons is how teachers were using the tech to support this group of children. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, we do use Showbit, and teachers are adept in this school at using the features on Showbit, recording voice notes for children where perhaps reading is a barrier and so on. And that was really, really evident, not just from what the Senko said in a deep dive in a meeting with Ofsted, but what they actually saw in the classroom, which is important, and how we use the tech to support this group, how certain children use the accessibility features on iPad to help them with their learning, and just generally how we were able to use the technology to support children who may be struggling or falling behind. So that was really, really important. And although the one quote said they ensured, like you can see on the screen, the feedback that we got in our meeting was this was a real strength, and how we were using the technology to adapt and support lessons and tasks so all children could achieve. And teacher workload. What we were able to show, well, teachers in their meetings with Ofsted inspectors all discussed how they felt that the introduction of technology to school had improved their work-life balance. That wasn't something that was prompted, that was naturally what they all talked about when they had their meetings. And they specifically talked about how, as all work is marked, even work that completed in books is uploaded to Showbit, teachers have the option, the choice whether to mark in books or to mark online. And at most felt that marking online, now we're a few years into using the program, had reduced their marking considerably, and that's why most of our marking is done online. Teachers have the autonomy to decide which is the best way to feedback to their children, of course, but most feel, I think, in the school that they feel that the strongest way is online via Show because of the different features. And teachers spoke very positively about this to inspectors. It was consistent, the message across, which has been embedded over time. Teachers also weren't as confident perhaps with the technology, did speak about the time that had been given towards their CPD and to support them so they could get the hang of things, and that was a real strength in the feedback from the inspectors. So using the iPad to reduce teacher workload. Now, staff feel that they are well supported by leaders. For example, they appreciate the steps that leaders have taken to reduce their workload around marking assessments. That was there in black and white in the report. That wasn't just handed over via the feedback as an SLT. That was there. So we're really quite proud of that, because and Showbit has had that impact on us as a school, and we're still massive fans of Showbit, as you can appreciate. They did talk to us a little bit about online safety. It was positive, the feedback that we got about our online safety, but they asked us, with all children having access to a device, how we were able to ensure that children, you know, were using them in the right manner. We talked in this part. We talked specifically about in classes teachers using Apple Classroom and what that enables teachers to do with regards to the class, how they can control and oversee the classroom with it, with regards to distributing work, seeing what children are up to. And then we talked about iPads going home, and the lead inspector rightly asked about, obviously we were sending from year 3 to year 6 children home with a device every night, and what we did to ensure that was right in the correct way. What we explained in this section was we use Jam School, and throughout Jam School we have created profiles, which means at 3 o'clock when our school finishes, all the apps from a child's iPad drop off, and they're just left with the apps that we want to use for their homework, whether that be a core Apple app, but for example, Safari is often taken off at 3 o'clock, so they can only access what we want them to access. And then at 8 o'clock, all apps drop off, and the iPad effectively becomes disabled. They can't use it because we don't want children staying up late on their iPad. And that was how we talked about how we keep what we've done with sending the iPads home, how we're able to keep children safe and monitor what they're doing. And I think that was looked at, the inspectors looked at that with a good eye, really. So before we go on to challenges, which I'm going to give you an honest and frank account of, are there any questions about anything that I've discussed there?
Hi, Matt. I'll just jump in there if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. There wasn't many questions. A few kind of thumbs up really around what you're doing with Jam School, and it is fantastic what you can do with Jam School, and especially what you guys are doing with Jam School. If anybody doesn't know Jam School or doesn't know what MDM is, MDM is mobile device management, and you can effectively control the devices for the students regardless of where they are, at home or in the school. And if anybody does want to know, sorry to keep saying if anybody wants to know more about Jam School or MDM in general, obviously you've got Matt, you've also got myself, just to just shout out. Okay. Laura, you got your hand up there?
Yes, sorry, I'm the wrong way around as well, which really isn't helping the situation, so I'm sorry about that. I was just wondering, Matt, what the reaction to parents was when those different drop-offs happened. Was it very much that the devices were sold as an education device, and therefore that was the reason why you did it, or was there much kind of feedback from the parents that was negative around that kind of drop-off?
That's a good question. Well, with that, Laura, is we inform parents what we were doing before we sent them home. So when we created these profiles, but before we initially decided to send them home post remote learning, because we learned from remote learning a little bit, we did tell parents, sort of out of a consultation, this is what we intend on doing, what do you think? And to be honest with you, at that point, all feedback was pretty positive, because they appreciate what we were trying to do. I mean, the device it's a school device. Our children don't pay for their iPads, they don't lease them. It is a school device, so it is there purely for school. What we did say is we try to open up a little bit. If you think there's an app or something that you think you could use at home with your child and it's not available, come and talk to us and we'll have a chat about it. But I think the feedback, they understood what we were trying to do, and it helped them a little bit, because what we didn't want is, I just remember a few years ago, I ran, as a maths leader, I ran a times table Rockstars competition, which took off and it went really, really well. And then when I looked at the data, there've been kids on it at 11 and 12 o'clock at night, which was me initially. I was like, oh no, this is not what I was trying to create. So from then on, we spoke to Sync and to Graham and the guys, and we looked at what we could do for Jam. And so far since then, I'd say the use of the iPads has been spot on. They've been going home now for a long time, and we've had no issues at all, which is really positive, I think.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Jennifer's asked, what does feedback look like on your iPads? I'd invite you to come and have a look, Jennifer. It's a variety of feedback, really. It's, as I say, teachers have autonomy in their classrooms to feedback that to their children. Our marking policies, teachers have autonomy to feedback to their thing, what they think's best. So sometimes that might be feedback that they've written on the spot in their books. The only thing is that all work at the end of the lesson, even in books, is uploaded to Showbay. So we've got that full trail of work that's in books and online. Sometimes feedback is voice notes, sometimes it's a video, or whatever's best for that particular lesson on that particular day. And I'd be happy to share some of that with anyone, really, because it's something we're quite proud of. I'm just going to go into our last part now, which is our challenges that we faced. So I've just jotted some down. The first thing, challenge that we faced, I would suggest, was in my maths deep dive. It was about working books. And why I say that was a challenge is the inspector who I spoke to was looking through books. We took some books to a work scrutiny alongside iPads, but the inspector was focused on the books. And they looked at a piece of work, which in their opinion, the child had got something wrong, which they had. And in their opinion, the teacher hadn't corrected the mistake the child had made. I had to explain that piece of work would be uploaded to Showbay, and that feedback would have taken place on Shobi, and your heart flutters a little bit of that as a leader at that moment. And then we went on to Shobi, we found the corresponding date on Shobi, and lo and behold, the teacher had fed back live online on Shobi, which the inspector at that point accepted. But to the confidence you need, actually, I said my heart fluttered. You need to know that all staff are on board and using, Shobi the way we've designed at that moment came to fruition, really. But we had to be firm. Well, I had to be firm, really, about this was the way we worked and why we think it's the best way to work for our children. And it's fair to say that at that point, the inspector, I don't know if they didn't understand or wasn't quite sure of what we meant by works well as Shobi, but at the end of that conversation, they didn't know. So that was one challenge. Another was the inspectors all teachers I explained took their iPads to meetings and had examples of all their work and subjects on their iPad. And the inspector wanted paper copies, which we didn't have because we try to be an eco school, or we try to use paper as little as possible. But in the end, we did have, when you're having deep dives in certain curriculum, we did print off in the end certain things, certain sort of curriculum overviews for the inspector, because they did want that. And we were asked about secondary transition quite a lot, as in what we do as an Apple Regional Training Centre, as an Apple school, how that works with when they go to secondary. And we talked a lot in that about how, although we are an Apple school, we believe for us, iPad is the best device to access all different systems, including Google and Microsoft. And we talked about how children have the opportunity within our computing curriculum to access that. So we feel they go to secondary ready to access anything, which covered that. And I've not put on there, but I think it was part of the deep dive process. When I was in the deep dive, the inspectors obviously used to flicking through books. And as a lot of our work isn't in books, it was having to control that and say, no, to get the full overview of a child's work or progress, you need to be flicking through Shobi. And we had to be firm with that. We had to be firm with that because our books, although we still use books, we write in books, we do some maths in books. To get an overview of a child's journey in this school, we do need to go through, you do need to look at Shobi, really. What's next for us? We're post Ofsted. We're looking into using iPads to support physical and mental well-being. Really, we've invested in an orienteering course which can be used across a variety of subjects. I'm posting regular updates about that on our Twitter accounts if you want to give that a look. And that is about everything from me. So what I will do is come back to you guys and see if there's any questions about anything I've discussed there. I think it's fair to say when I put challenges in there, it's just sort of things that I know we talked about as a leadership team before the inspection of what potential questions inspectors would have, but we were happy that by looking at devices, we can get across what we needed to get across. It was just about talking to inspectors, and they were open-minded. They saw what type of school we were. It was just little things like that where we had to say, no, this is how we do things, really. And that, Graham, is about it for me. Is there anything you want to raise? Anything I missed?
Just one of the challenges that I really liked was the transition to secondary. I don't think everybody actually realises that the iPad is, well, obviously we think it's the best device, but it truly is, because you've got Google in the school, you use Microsoft in the school, and it absolutely covers all of those kind of issues that any questions that may be asked about, well, the high school is a Microsoft school or it's a Google school. The fact that you actually give your students that ability to access all platforms, including Apple, is fantastic, and it's a great challenge. And the fact you've got the answers to back it up is great as well. It absolutely is. A lot of the skills are transitional, and again, people still have in the mind, and I don't want to use the word older people, but well, we need to learn how to use Word. Well, no, you need to learn how to word process, be that Pages, be that Docs, be that Word, but they have that ability to be able to do that with the iPad, and certainly in your school as well. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say to everyone is if there is a recording of the webinar, all my contact details are on there. I appreciate, depending where your school is, where you are in, whether you're in the window or not, there may be questions you've got that you might don't want to ask in front of anyone, or to put in the chat box. And please, if you have got anything, you reach out, get in touch via the Twitter channel, or my email's on there, and I'll help you any way I can. I mean, as I say at the beginning, I can't tell you how to do a good Ofsted, but I can tell you what worked for us and what inspectors thought about what we did. But I appreciate the schools on this call maybe who've got iPads as well, who've not gone through that inspection yet. And I think it can be a bit daunting, and it can be a time where we start, oh, are we doing it right? But all I can say is that we introduced iPads in 2016, and we still think it's one of the best decisions we made as a school.